control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God. Set a fire down in my soul that I can contain and I can control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God. Set a fire down in my soul that I can contain, I can control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God. Set a fire down in my soul that I can contain and I can control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God.
Thank you for joining us again today as we reflect on racism and environmental justice. We know that racism and environmental injustices are very interconnected. We've seen that here in Minnesota over the last few months in particular, and through the eyes of a new St. Joseph worker in the St. Paul province, Laura, we'll reflect today on her experiences in Minneapolis after the wake of the George Floyd murder here in Minneapolis, and her perspective as a new St. Joseph worker. Welcome, Laura. Well, Laura, thank you for joining us today as we continue our reflection series on the CSJ charism and environmental racism. We're so excited as a St. Joseph worker in the 2020 through 2021 year. Why don't we begin our conversation by where are you seeing the intersections of racism and environmental injustice in your placement work this year as a St. Joseph worker?
Yeah, so my placement site is Mary's Pence. So we're working to provide grant funding for women-led nonprofits, or rather community organizations, grassroots organizations in the US and Canada, and women entrepreneurs in like Mexico and Central America. So I think something that comes to mind is like sustainable food systems with like the partners in Central America, particularly like during COVID. And yeah, how there's a lot, like my understanding is like there's a lot more like localized agriculture because of like businesses closing and like less transit and like people being less able to travel to get food. So I think like it sounds like more of a reliance on like the immediate environment, like locally. So like, yeah, just like from my perspective, it's like learning about that experience made me think a lot more about how like land is used and sort of like categorized into certain like functions and stuff, like how densely how dense like the Twin Cities is in terms of yeah, just a lot of highways and parking lots and homes and big buildings that like were that to be a need here, it would probably be pretty hard. I mean, there's a lot of like community gardens, but I think it's just
gardens,
like,
but not necessarily community agriculture, right?
yeah, that it's like, is this capable of like sustaining, like being like a very like main food source? So yeah, I think about that in terms of, yeah, like what it takes to have access to like the food people need, and particularly with like the global south being hit the most, and like it isn't as immediate here, but in other parts of the world it is.
What are some things in the world that give you hope and inspiration when it comes to issues of environmental injustice and racism?
Something that I learned while still in school that like made a lot of sense was part of like the value of like community gardens is it allows people to have access. I mean, it takes a lot of work, but eventually will bring access to foods that aren't as readily available, which particularly for like immigrant communities in the Twin Cities can be like, yeah, it can be like a very important thing.
I'm wondering, you as St. Joseph workers are living very close to the site of the George Floyd killing, murder. I know there's a big community group that has started gardening out there, and I know the seasons are now changing, but what has been your experience as St. Joseph workers going down and experiencing what I think is a big racial justice issue of our time and very connected to the environment as well?
Something that, and like I've increasingly been like tuning into this from like my time in the Twin Cities since I was little, of how close everything is. Like especially like not being from Minneapolis and realizing like this neighborhood where I have these memories is like blocks away from where someone was like killed in the street. And yeah, like if people didn't cry out and like mark places, that like how many have already been like, if not forgotten, like neglected or like failed to have been recognized. In a lot of ways it like makes everything feel a lot smaller, which I think is kind of part of what happens when like this really big discussion is centered around, like a global discussion is centered around like a place that's super close to us. I feel like there's just so much energy, and like you can kind of feel people's eyes and like minds like all kind of pointing to one place.
So Laura, thank you for sharing a little bit of your experiences as a St. Joseph worker and the spirit of the house and what you're learning from one another, and blessings on your year as a St. Joseph worker.
Yeah, thank you.
We are so grateful to Laura for sharing her heart and her insight with us today. The value of community gardens, allowing good, nutritious, sustainable food sources for our neighbors, is in line with our CSJ mission and the future direction set forth by the congregation. Today, you and I are invited once again to respond to the cries of the earth and the cries of our dear neighbors. For some, it begins with reflecting on patterns and habits that may be wasteful. For others, it may be planting and tending the earth, and others, protests. For many, it will be the much needed prayers for change. Let it be something, and let it begin today. We wish you peace.
For the world, we raise our voices, for the home that gives us birth. In our joy, we sing, returning home to our blue-green hills of earth. For the earth forever turning, for the skies, for every sea, for our lives share